Hey church family, thank you so much for joining us for today's Daily Devotional. Brother Brent has been walking with us through Colossians chapter 3, looking at this whole idea of how do we deal with each other, how do we accept one another or live with one another when we have disagreements. And so here Paul has really walked through a good bit of what that looks like, kind of dealing with those messy relationships, knowing how to walk through some disagreements. And now he's kind of beginning, as we are nearing the end of our week, nearing the end of our series here on messy relationships, Paul is offering us sort of a catch-all phrase, a catch-all truth here in Scripture that we can use to guide us as we're dealing with messy relationships and dealing with relationships where we may not always agree. And so in Colossians chapter 3, starting in verse 14, he writes, above all, so above bearing with one another, above knowing who you are, above all the compassion, above all the kindness, not that those things are not important. They are vital, as Brother Brent has shown us throughout this week. But what Paul is saying, hey, is let's tie all of this together. Above all, the most important thing you've got to remember, that's what he's saying when he writes that. Above all, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Paul also writes in Galatians 5:14, the whole law is fulfilled in one statement, love your neighbor as yourself. When the Pharisees and the teachers asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? He tells them, love your neighbor as yourself. It is obvious that part of walking with Christ and part of working with one another as the church, God intends for us to love one another. And here, Paul makes very clear, it is not just vital, it's vital for unity. Love is the glue that holds us all together. There's really two ways that love is the glue that holds us all together. One is when we love one another, we're going to treat each other how we would want to be treated. We would not tear ourselves down, right? So we should not tear others down. If we're going to love one another, we're going to treat each other with respect. We're going to treat each other the way we would want to be treated. The second way that love is the glue, the second way that love unites us, is the fact that we love because Christ first loved us. The very reason that you're watching this video, the very reason that we have this church family that we get to be a part of is because of the relationship that we have with Christ, or that I hope that you have with Christ. He loved us. He gave his life for us. And while we may be very different, we do different. Me and you may have different hobbies. We may laugh at different things. We may live very different lives. There is for sure one unifying factor between your life and my life, and that is our relationship with Christ. So love unites us, one, in that we will treat each other with respect, but love also unites us in that Christ loved us first. And his great love, an unimaginable love, a love that we have a difficult time understanding as just mere humans, that love is the greatest of loves. And that is the one that we need to be focused on. That's the one we need to strive to emulate. While it may be impossible on this side of heaven, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. So when we disagree with one another, we have these different differences or disputes, as we saw Paul wrote in Romans earlier this week. Let's be sure that we approach those things, one, with love for one another, but also in recognition of the love that Christ has for us. Our author gives us a couple of questions that we can look at. So when we finish, I hope that you'll take a moment and look at these, maybe write about them. And so here they are. It says, why is love the most important calling in our lives? And the second, how is love the fulfillment of all the commands in Scripture? So I hope you'll take a moment to look at those questions, help you kind of further think about and really digest and apply this idea of loving and its effect on us as believers. And more than anything, church family, as we have talked about love, we want you to know that we love you and we're praying for you.